Is this thing on? I think it is. Okay. Hello everybody, welcome back to Darwin's Room right here with another episode of Movie Reviews Weekly. Today we're going to be talking about Brian Banks. Okay, so Brian Banks tells the true story and inspirational sports drama about the real-life Brian Banks, who was a very successful football player in high school, but just as he was about to make it big in college football and was on track to make his dreams come true to play in the NFL, he was accused of a very serious crime that he did not commit, and now we see him trying to make things right and prove his innocence. Now, I was very, very excited to see this movie. It took me a while to actually finally watch it. I've had it for a long time. I bought it when it first came out on DVD, but I had never gotten around to watching it. But I was over at a friend's house recently, and I finally got around to watching it, and I'm really, really glad that I did, because I really enjoyed this film. Now, that's not to say that this film does not have its issues, because it most certainly does. But as a matter of fact, I want to cover those first, because I really want to get to the positive stuff as quickly as I possibly can. So let's jump into it. Alright, so the first con that I have to say about this movie is the look of it. I felt that a lot of this movie looked very overly saturized, and just the color palette was way too extreme, and then there were other scenes that just felt very plain. They were filmed very poorly, and they didn't look that good. It looked kind of as if it was a TV movie. So there were some scenes that I just thought, wow, that could have been handled a lot better. But that's not the whole movie, because there were scenes that looked really terrific, I might say. So I think that it just felt a little uneven in terms of the way that this movie looked. And then some moments just felt really over-exaggerated, as if, okay, I'm sure it didn't really happen that way, whatever story they were trying to tell there. And so that just kind of takes you out of the film at a few points throughout the movie, because it just makes you have to question, did that really happen like that? And then there's a character where I'm not even sure if they were a real person, because I know sometimes these true stories for a movie, they'll add in a fake character just to add in a certain element to the film. So I'll have to research that for myself later, but just some moments felt over-exaggerated and made you question the credibility of the whole movie. However, I do feel like much of the film is telling a very loyal interpretation of the true story. So I do think for the most part they nailed that right on the head, and I'm really happy that I at least got that feeling from this movie. It's just that some moments felt very over-exaggerated. And then some of the performances were very mediocre, I might add, and some of the characters felt very much predictable or cliche, the kind of character you would think that they would be in this type of film. And that kind of lends itself to what I had said about some moments being over-exaggerated, or at least appearing to be over-exaggerated. But that's also leading into the good stuff, because not all of the performances were mediocre. I feel that Aldis Hodge and Sherry Shepherd did really great in this movie. Sherry Shepherd was great as the mother of Brian Banks, and Aldis Hodge did a really fantastic job as Brian Banks himself. They both gave very human performances and very sympathetic and empathetic performances, and I really, really loved that, and it just helped invest me into the story even more. So now that we're into the good stuff, let's keep going with that. Alright, I want to talk about the story of this movie. I felt that this movie had a very moving story, and the film itself is very inspirational. I love a good sports drama, like The Blind Side, like Remember the Titans. So the fact that this movie lies in that genre, I was already very excited to see it. And it does not disappoint in terms of its story and the way that it is told. I feel that it is told very coherently, and it's very just humanly told, and I felt that it was a very beautiful thing. And like I said, that's not to say that it doesn't have its issues. Some moments were a little over exaggerated from the seams of it, but all in all, as a cohesive thing, I felt that it was very well told, and I really loved it a lot for that aspect. Which leads me to want to talk about how well developed the story itself is. and how it lends itself to have these well-developed characters. We really get to see Aldis Hodge dive into this performance as Brian Banks, and I was fully invested in this character and in the real person. And after the movie ended, I looked into the story a little bit more, and I wanted to know just more about this guy, and I felt just more compelled, and I really wanted to know more and just be more invested. And I love how this movie did that, and it developed the story and the characters so well through that. And when a movie does that, you know, you always want to applaud that, because if you really genuinely care about the characters that you're watching on screen, then the filmmakers must be doing something right. Which leads to my final thing. This movie was never boring, and I was always engaged into the film. Even through the moments where, you know, something was over-exaggerated, or I had an issue with how the film looked in a certain point from, you know, the oversaturation. Even with those, like, and that's more technical stuff, you know, even with those small things, I felt that I was always engaged, and I always cared about the story. I always cared about these characters, and I always cared about the outcome, and I was always curious about it. So I really, really loved that I was always into it. The pacing was really, really good, and I just was very involved in the story. I very much wanted to hear all about it. So I'm really happy with how this movie turned out. So with that being said, you guys, I'm going to give Brian Banks 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, you guys, 4 out of 5 stars. In the end, you know, it's a very heartwarming film. You know, it's very emotional. I almost cried during this movie. I did not, but I almost did. And I thought it was a very beautiful movie. It has its issues, but I think if you can look past those kind of technical issues and some of the mediocre performances and 1 or 2 characters that feel over-exaggerated, then I think you'll have a really good time with this movie, as I found myself to have with this movie. So definitely check it out, you guys, because as I said, it's 4 out of 5 stars, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Alright, you guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Darwin's Room, aka Movie Reviews Weekly. If you like that episode, you can click the like and subscribe button. If you've seen the movie and you want to talk about it, go ahead, go down to the comment section down below, and we could talk about it. Let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And once again, you guys, like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next episode. Take care.